Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to our part two with Dr. Muhammad Al-Mas'ari regarding Kalam. Now, Kalam has been a very contentious issue recently due to the Athari people of Da'wah, those who call themselves Salafi, advocating a more literalist interpretation where they neglect ta'wil and the mutashabihat in relation to certain ghaibi matters, such as Allah, His actions, and the hereafter even. Now, one issue that's very controversial and that many Muslims are very wary to get into is the fact that the Quran is created. Now, Jake, the Muslim metaphysician, has made some arguments in refutation of the mutakallimin, those who are engaged in kalam, the theologians like the Maturidis, the Ash'aris, and the Mu'tazila. He's arguing briefly, which we're going to play the clip of it now, that the Quran is created. He agrees that the Quran that we have today, the Mus'haf, it is muhdath, is originated, but despite that, he says it's not uncreated, it's not created. Rather, it's uncreated, غير مخلوق. He says, so it has been originated, but it's not created. And he links it to nominalism. He rejects the idea of, for example, language. And he says that the Arabic God spoke within the Quran, because it's the word of Allah, it's uncreated. So let's play this clip briefly, then we will get into the debate and discussion, inshallah.
A scriptural perspective and why the Ash'ari position is wrong for dividing Kalam, making the Arabic Quran created, and honestly trying to play games with what the meaning of the word Quran is. They believe that Kalam, this eternal sifa, is uncreated, but it's just a ma'na, it's just a meaning that without any words. We believe in the meaning and the words together, uncreated. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke it, and it's an actual act of speech of his. They don't believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually speaks. Okay, so that's one of the major differences.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not speak. I think this is a very important topic to discuss as well within this general topic. Does Allah speak? What does speak mean? What does kalam mean? Is it communication? Is it words? What is it?
Yeah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
والصلاة والسلام على خاتم النبيين وإمام المرسلين وآله الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المخلصين المجاهدين الصالحين سلم تسليما كثيرا. Yes, I would have loved that this issue has not been opened in the first place, because this is really for academic discussion, not in the YouTube. But nowadays the YouTube have become almost like an academy, so we are facing this situation. And it seems to be this issue has been raised recently. It has been for 1,000 years, but raised recently by Salafi and so on in their final battle, because they have been forced into retreat. The so-called Salafi and Wahabi, they have been exposed in the recent, at least, let us say, almost a century since the First World War, maybe even more than a century, that they are just a mouthpiece of some British agents in Saudi Arabia and so on, and to make them appear that they are the sincere Muslims, the one who are really carrying the proper Tawheed, etc., while in reality they are nothing than just British puppets, despicable British puppets, and the accessories in the establishing of the cancerous entity called Israel in the Muslim lands. So, and then they got set at first, there was the issue with the Arab nationalism, and they attacked Abdul Nasser, and that was correct, because calling for nationalism, tribalism, etc., is definitely not in synchronization with Islamic allegiance and alliance, and that the Muslim are one tabi'iyya, one belonging, besides being brothers and one ummah in matter of brotherhood, but I mean now in the political sense, as a political alliance. Anyway, then they excited recently the issue of Muawiyyah and back and forth, because Muawiyyah is the symbol of oppression, annihilating the Shura, and shedding Muslim blood with the flimsiest of arguments and so on. We have already established and discussed what Muawiyyah is. As we established, I think we established, alhamdulillah, and we challenged some people to mubahala that he's a munafiq kafir, and we verified and checked the hadith that he will die not on Islam. So that's now
they're willing to excommunicate or say that Fulan and Fulan is an innovator for Muawiyyah, but strangely enough, they're not willing to put their own life or their well-being at stake for this man. Because they know what he is.
We offer them mubahala because we are certain about this. We believe it's based on Islamic certitude, and that's it. We no need to go further in this point. Then recently, again, they're exciting this old dead problem, the dead horse of is Kalam created or not created? Is it kufr? Benefiting from the massive blunder of Ahmed Bin Hanbal, their imam. I will call from now on imamuhum, their imam. It's not our imam. For reason I mention if necessary, but not now. We don't want to dig graves. Leave the people in their grave. Otherwise, as I warned some people in time past, when I was in prison of Al-Hayr, when they asked Muawiyyah, said, leave Muawiyyah in his grave. If you dig him out, you will get stench, worms, scorpions, and snake. That is closed down. But they did not listen. Now they excited it, and then we got the snake and things out. The same with others. Anyway, we don't want to that. Now they're exciting these things which are not relevant. Settling them one way or another does not bring you close to Allah Ta'ala, does not save you in Akhirah, does not get you in Jannah or Nar. It's actually indulging in that without knowledge or with limited knowledge or with a partisanship point of view is more likely to get you in Jahannam than the other way. Similar to issue of Qadr, and there are many hadith, the Messenger of Allah once listened to some Sahaba discussing, and one applying an ayah, another applying an ayah, and then he was so angry and his face was so red, as if someone rubbed in his face the seeds of pomegranate, and therefore not to be very red. If you have 100 pomegranate, your hand would be very dark red. And said, is that why you are being created? Is that what you have been commanded? They're created to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to submit to his commandments, not to discuss obscure and things. And then you're striking the Quran one ayah against another ayah. Yeah, Quran has come, so each ayah is confirming the other ayah. If you know how to do it, then do it. If you don't know, then refer it to its knowledgeable one. Don't make a matter of dispute. And then he did not settle even the issue they were discussing. He was so angry, and then they dispersed. So that's should give an example, and the Qadr is an issue nobody can avoid. And fatalism also is it's simply impossible to avoid. The issue of evil in the world, the issue of suffering, they're so fundamental, you don't blame anybody discussing. But is the Kalam created, not created? Is Mukhluq, not Mukhluq? That you can avoid. Is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Quran is the Kalam of Allah. As I say, if a mushrik asks you for asylum, for political asylum or for protection, there's istijara, that is essentially what in modern times called asylum, then give him ijara, grant him asylum until he listens to the speech of Allah. That's Allah's wording. And let's go now to so I would love have that would not have been excited, and it seems to be now has been excited. That's not Jake. Jake is a good Muslim from America, and he is coming to this whole matter innocent. He doesn't come with the loaded background we have. Definitely he is not in her, but without knowing this matter being discussed, since he is very skilled in discussing with the Christian and various views about Isa, the Messiah, the son of Maryam, peace and blessing and greeting of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and his noble and blessed Holy Mother. He's specialist in that, and in that will be discussion, what's the word, is he co-eternal, and so on. So he's used to that area of discussion. And he thinks this is relevant in that case. Let us see. And that's how the issue that started actually in the discussion, and the people did not tend to the matter as it should be. Let us see what they usually say. They say the Kalam of Allah. The whole issue has not been scrutinized, and the terms used are not being defined correctly. What means the Kalam of Allah? When Allah said in the Quran, the ayah of if a Muslim asks for asylum, grant him asylum until he hears the speech of Allah, meaning obviously the Quran. And obviously the speech of Allah in that case is as recited by Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Yeah? So until it hears the speech of Allah. And then bring him to his safe point, the place of his security. That's because they're people who do not know. So they listen to the Quran, and that's what Allah intended. And for that, the Quran has been revealed so that people listen to it, understand it, and then review their life if they are not believer. Ponder about the Quran from cover to cover. So you have to ponder the Quran from A to Z. And see if there's any, or you think there's a contradiction, try to create a contradiction and see if it can be settled. If there's a contradiction and you can establish your certitude, then it's definitely from Allah. If you cannot establish, anywhere, then it's from Allah, because there's no way that such a book of this size with several million, I don't remember the number of count of words, I think several millions words, will be free of contradiction, addressing so many complex and deep topics. So that's inevitable. No human can do that, especially an illiterate man in the depth of Mecca, in the depth of Arabia, in an area which is far away from academia, from philosophy and thinking. So that's how it comes. Is it created? What is it? Does it have? Usually I joke, I say, does it have a tail or two legs or two front? Just to make a mockery to the one when I'm discussing it. That's irrelevant. See, listen to the speech of Allah. We did not give an obligation to you decide that the speech of Allah is being created, not created, how it emerges, how it comes out from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some of this may be impossible to recognize or to perceive. So that's one. But since that issue has opened, and most likely it's opened because Muslims know from the Quran, and this is also the wording in the beginning of the Gospel of John. At the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Actually, the Word with the God, with the capital G, with God, and the Word. That's most likely later insertion. The Word was a God with small g. So this is the God, the supreme God, and a God, a lower God. That's a correct Greek. If you scrutinize the Greek, it is not the same that the word was God. No, it was a God, means something of a divine value, one of the gods. And at the time, people regarded that divinity is something which can multiply, and there's the supreme one, and there are branches and things like that. They did not the deep philosophy of necessary existing being and the impossibility of composition also were not developed. We addressed some of that in the previous one. But anyway, so they said, in the Quran say, in addressing Isa, كلمة إن الله يبشرك بكلمة منه اسمه المسيح عيسى بن مريم وروح منه, مثلا كلمة, a word from him. So confirming what John saying, but that means it is a kalima from Allah, and the Kalam of Allah being an attribute, and the Kalam of Allah being an attribute, and it cannot be created because Allah is eternal. It cannot be generated in time. It's pre-time, so it's eternally generated. And something what the meaning of eternally generating is internally contradictory. But we're not here discussing that. We'll discuss the general problem there further. And this way you must admit, Quran says the kalima, admit that and instruct you to believe that he's a kalima of Allah, and thus he is not created, he is divine. And the Muslims say, no, some say, no, that's not true, the kalima is created. Others say, no, it's not created, but Isa is not the kalima, it's created with the kalima, or by the kalima. And this is an expression, kalimatun min, created by kalima. Like kalima from him is a command, something like that. Communication from him. Does not mean it's a kalima, the kalima itself. And they entered in never-ending back and forth. And that opened that issue of, and also issues of Qadr and divine knowledge, and all of these were opened. And that there's no way to avoid them in discussion, because philosophy was abound between Christian and Jews, such philosophical discourse, but also the pagans of Persia and so on. Actually, the Persians were mostly followers of Zaradishtian, which are called Majus, but a substantial portion of them they are not, the Christians do not recognize them as Christian, follow of Mani, who is essentially some kind of off-lines cream skirt as a Christian, and there's a following of Marcion, who is also a Christian, still regarded on the borderline of Christianity. However, Mani is regarded out, and both are essentially dualists, believing that there's a supreme or remote God, and there is a lower God who is some kind of an evil entity,
like
a demigod,
like the general Zoroastrian belief.
And that's Marcion. And Mani is similar, but with further issues there, which we don't want to discuss now, obviously, today. And for Marcion, the most shocking aspect what Marcion has put on the table is that the one who sent Musa and revealed the Old Testament is the demiurge, the evil God.
He says
that. The one who created the world. He's the creator of the world. But the good God and Isa are coming from outside to penetrate this evil one and remove his clash from human, or something like that. It's a very dark and negative philosophy. Whatever it is, many behind the rivers in Khurasan and so on were actually Marcionists and Manihists, follower of Mani and Marcion. You could call them Christian if you wish. You could leave the name if you wish. Most Christians don't regard them as Christian, or at most heretics. Malcolm is still regarded as a heretic Christian. Mani is not regarded as Christian at all, although he appealed that Isa is one of the manifestation of the sons of the Supreme God, or the light of Supreme God coming, penetrating the darkness of the world, or something like that. We're not going to discuss all of this today. So all of these issues are under discussion, and no wonder that Muslims got sucked in, and they are not yet skilled, especially in the second generation. Time of Sahaba, they barely anything like that. They were busy with jihad and establishing dawla, etc. But next generation, things were settled, and people attend to these philosophical issues bit by bit. So let us go to the issue itself now. The discussion, like Brother Jake said, Kalam Allah and so on. This Kalam, the issue is not even developed and analyzed properly. Let me get the issue first, what the terms are used, what they mean. Let us use another attribute, which there is not much of a dispute, but it has a fine point which we'll address later. Let's talk that Allah is Al-Khaliq. What's meaning Al-Khaliq? Meaning the one who creates and has the power to create.
Yes.
So we have Al-Khaliq is the divine name, but there are three things which can derive. There's something which we call Al-Khaliqiyya, that he has the attribute of being capable of creation. Then we have, for certain entities, creation after creation, or creation and another creation and so on. Khalq, the action of Khalq itself, and the result of the action of Khalq is the Mukhluq. So we have the attribute, and this is called Sifat al-Fi'al, the divine attributes which are connected with divine actions. There are some attributes which have no connection to action, like for example, Izzah, Al-Aziz, the irresistible, the unapproachable. If you fight him, you cannot fight. There's no action with it. He is resist. He is having such an infinite toughness that whatever you do, you will not reach him or do any harm to him. There's no action inside. It's just essentially and intrinsically inapproachable, inattackable, uninjurable, unkillable, etc. That's Aziz.
Yes.
That's Aziz. The same with great or Kabir. Big, huge, obviously, not in a physical sense of bodies, because that will be limited beyond any limitation. That's also, there's no action related to that. So these sifat, they call it sifat غير متعدية or sifat that, and these are attributes related to an action. So al-khalq, al-khaliqiyya is a derived word. The Arabic language did not have original khaliqiyya, but the philosophers have developed that later. But khaliqiyya is this attribute from which the name al-khaliq. Al-raziq also, there is al-raziq, he is al-raziq, the bestower, and this is the capability of bestowing, al-raziqiyya, that's the attribute, and the action of rizq. Allah gave me rizq. His action to give rizq is called rizq, and the result he give you, which you receive in your hand, and money and wealth and so on, is the rizq, or the baby he give you rizq to. So he's a raziq. But this khalq is more clearer. So we have al-khaliqiyya. This is a divine attribute. And for necessarily existing being, the separation between essence or divine entity and the attributes is only a mental construct to study them and analyze them. In reality, is inseparable, because the necessarily existing being cannot be composed. So this is not a composition, it's just a mental construct to study the matter, no more or less. For contingent being, you may separate them, and it could be separated. Like, for example, this wall is green, or the wall behind me is green. What does this mean? It has the attribute of being green, but I could imagine that the green is actually the color of the paint on top. I can scratch the paint away, and the wall itself is not intrinsically green, because it's composed.
It's composed. Yeah.
But we know that the material, the green cells, because certain lights are absorbed, and we go further and further, but it's again a composite. Why the light is? Because it's an atom, and then the electron can go up and down and so on, and absorb and radiates. So it's composed. It goes all to the composition that you can separate for the contingent being. For the necessarily existing, it is no way to separate. Although, if you analyze, you discuss the khaliqiyya. Does not mean the khaliqiyya is anything separate from the being. For the necessarily existing, we could say there is nothing called that and sifat, except in the abstraction for analysis, for mental analysis. But in reality, it is one entity, uncomposed, fundamental, symbol.
So the
Absolute,
necessary
solid,
being has no
absolutely
accident.
irresistible.
So the necessary being has no accidents, has no parts.
No, has no parts. Accident is something wrong. Has no part, has no contingency, not accident. No contingency. That's the mistake. That's the fundamental, deadly mistake which mutakallimin made in the past in the issue of hawadith and so on. And also some philosophers did, and ended in the catastrophe of all these problems, which have no solution except to admit that there may be some hawadith there. But we come to that. Then the action of khalq. What khalq means? Khalq is actually some subcategory of ihdath. Originally, it means shaping. Evidence from the Quran itself. We have to go to the Arabic language, but what is the master reference for the Arabic language, which enshrines the fundamental meanings, the most reliable one, in addition to what we read from Arab in their poetry and their speech and so on, and recorded in the dictionaries of the language. But the Quran is over that and supreme, because the Quran defines and fixes the Arabic language and not the opposite. They are connected. The moment the revelation was complete, the Arabic language is that what the Quran defined. And the terms used in the Quran, not all the Arabic languages, there are many other words. You have to go and search the Arabs and put it in the dictionary. And this is being done by Tawatur as well established in dictionary. Don't want to go that. Also the qawaid, they are used in the Quran without being explicitly written as grammar. And the people deduce the grammar rules from the Quran and the Arabic speech.
Very good.
So we have in the Quran says concerning Isa, and he addressing by saying, وَأَخْلُقَ لَكُم مِّنَ الطِّينِ كَهَيْئَةِ الطَّيْرِ فَأَنفُخُ فِيهِ فَيَكُونُ طَيْرًا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. I create for you, أخلق. I made for you, I create, the word خَلَقَ. I create for you like the shape of an من الطين, from mud, from pottery clay, from clay, wet clay. He shapes something. أخلق كهيئة الطير. I shape something which looks like a bird. When they blow it, it flies like a bird. It becomes alive. That's one of his miracles. It's not in the canonical gospel, but in some apocryphal gospel, and attributed to him in his youth, not in his age, which shows that there are things which have been lost and things have been misplaced. Many things, definitely, but that's just one. And by the way, that is mentioned as the first miracle. Ahead of even reviving the dead, ahead of believing, because it's more miraculous than the other things. Because reviving it that was alive, yes, it died, it stink now, starting to disintegrate, but it was somehow alive before. And then we're refixing it. But here it's not alive, it's just mud, just a shape. And that becomes alive. This is much more massive. It's as massive as turning the stick in the case of Musa into a snake.
Yes.
So أخلق لكم, I create you بإذن الله, by permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's very cool. Quran is very cautious here, so and makes sure that is not does not without divine permission. Is by Allah's power and Allah's permission. It is not because he has any intrinsic power. But also in the canon, in the gospel, the canon, everywhere there's miracles, always either Isa supplicate before, or he does it with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sometimes we express that, sometimes it doesn't need to exist because it's a well-established, known fact. Good? So that's the khalq. Now, when Allah created Adam, or created Isa, إنما مثل آدم عند الله كمثل عيسى خلقه من تراب إن مثل عيسى عند الله كمثل آدم. The example of Isa in sight of Allah, from the side of Allah represented to us as an example, is like Adam. Although different, but the comparison is very intriguing, and we will relate it another place to evolution and things like that. But it's not the issue today. خلقه من تراب. Adam was created from mud, from clay. ثم قال له كن فيكون. The expression قال له كن فيكون is a قول, but it is a metaphorical for the divine decision is made. The moment the divine decision made, the things come into existence immediately or in the stages as planned. Because خلقه من تراب, we know the خلق من تراب did not happen in a millisecond. It happened over 4 billion years. Evidence in Surah Al-Sajdah. But this is in our video about the creation of Adam and is there evolution or not. So this is an act. It's an act related to mud. and clay, which is in the earth 4 billion years ago, most likely volcanic mud, because it's in the other place. We're going to describe it as stinky or a dark colored and stink. That must be volcanic clay. So it gives us hint where really the original material were, and it has to be a volcanic clay with a certain material and certain way in which mucus-like material could accumulate and life could emerge there. But we're not going to biology and the beginning of life and the intricacies of the problem. But the action of Khalq from that's vastly later than the beginning of the universe, of 13.8 billion years. That's only 4 billion. Much later, just recently, relative to the beginning of the universe. So the action of Khalq is there. How it materializes the universe, the details, that's part of it. This part from our side can study by science, and the part from the divine side can be only analyzed rationally, or possibly cannot be perceived, or we cannot make any mental image of it whatsoever, because it's beyond our capability of mental image, because this is the action of a divine being, an existing being, which is, we may try to approximate by action of finite being, but approximation will be always finite to infinite, finite to infinite. We can throw them closer, but may be unable to comprehend that. That's it. And the result of this, in the case of Adam, it's maybe billions of years, is Adam standing here, rational and capable. And sometimes immediately, like when Isa was doing fashioning from clay, to blow, the moment he blows, Allah says, be, and it happens. Clearly, Isa is not having this power. It's the power of Allah. It flies immediately. So in one
kun is of twofold. One, it happens immediately. This is the known meaning. Yeah. The other one,
not necessary, not even necessary. Let's look at that. I throw that for the so-called Salafi and causing them some trouble deliberately to recognize that they did not study the problem thoroughly, and they did not study through the Quran, because they say Allah created Adam with his hands. And he has a hand. I don't want to go to the hand now. Another time, inshallah. ما منعك أن تسجد لما خلقت بيدي. Allah addressing the devil, saying, what prevents you from prostrating to that what I have created with my own hand, بيدي. And in the ayah of Isa, he says, إن مثل عيسى عند الله كمثل آدم خلقه من تراب ثم قال له كن فيكون. So either there's a contradiction, and that is the Quran is not from Allah, we can dump it in the rubbish. Or there's no contradiction, it is the same. خلقت بيدي, giving an extra meaning. It is كن فيكون, but with certain additional aspects which are expressed in Arabic بيدي. But we're not going to that and ta'wil. Leave that. Good? And Ibn Taymiyyah and everyone say the yad of Allah. If we say Allah has a yad, it's not a jariha, it's not a body part, it's not a part, because Allah can have no parts. So it's something else. Is another meaning.
Ibn Taymiyyah admits this, yes?
It must be admit. If you say jariha, معنى Allah can be cut. It can be cut away. It's divisible. That's impossible. That's not impossible. And contradiction of Allah Samad.
We call him Mujassim, so in a way he's not really a Mujassim either.
It's not really a Mujassim, but he has a problem with space and the relation of Allah to the space, which we also discuss later. Leave this now. So this is how things work. So we have Khaliqiyya, this is Allah al-Khaliq, meaning he has a Khaliqiyya. There's an act of Khalq, several acts of Khalq. Definitely the act of Khalq of Adam, which is خلقه من تراب ثم قال له, that's the Khalq. Forming from previous material. The universe have been brought out of nothingness in a singularity with no previous material. That's what they call creation ex nihilo, out of nothing. It is not a very good expression, but they mean out of no material or no existing before, but it's not from nothing, because Allah is something. It's the absolute thing, the absolute necessary existing, who brought that in existence. And the way it's mathematically expressed, it is a singularity. It cannot be otherwise. So we have these three things: Khaliqiyya, the action of Khalq, which can be various actions, some of them in time, some of them at the beginning of time, which start time, like the beginning of the universe, or even before that, making the decision to create the universe, or choosing the universe, the first action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then we have the result of that, which is the created being. So this khalq or shaping is a subcategory of ihdath. Ihdath meaning bringing something in time. Now, let's go to Kalam. Just khalq, because khalq is easier to understand and we can apply it to certain cases which are uncontroversial. The only controversial issue is that khalq of Adam, is that kun fayakun happened at 4 billion years ago or 200,000 years ago. If you say Adam is created suddenly out of mud, I don't care. It can be this and this, I don't care. It doesn't make any difference for me, neither for my iman nor for science even. Yeah, he could be created suddenly in a model of a body which is similar to that what have developed by the apes, for example. It's possible, but it's not relevant. But this is unlikely because the Quran confirms evolution and so on in another place in Surah Al-Sajdah.
Let's give an announcement.
But in any case, the action of Khalq is either 250,000 back or 700, according to William Lane Craig, who says no, even Neanderthal and other type of humans are subcategories of they are children of Adam and not other animals and so on. Whatever it is, or it is from the initial mud, the volcanic mud, 4.5 billion years ago. Either this or this, but it is in time far after the beginning of the universe. And there are other actions before. There are different actions before of khalq, of forming and khalq, including the starting one of the universe, which is creating ex nihilo. So there are various khalqs, and some of them are in time. Okay? Anything have in time, we can say muhdath. So Mukhluq meaning is a subcategory of muhdath. So the claiming it is muhdath or it is in time but not Mukhluq is playing with words. Doesn't make any. It's just playing.
So muhdath is Mukhluq.
Any Mukhluq is muhdath, not the opposite. So maybe something muhdath which is not Mukhluq. We could make conceive something or construct something, but all of them are in time. That's what interests us. The issue is with the Kalimin is the method, is it in time or out of time? That's the point. It's not the point of the point of Mukhluq or not Mukhluq or muhdath or not muhdath. Now let's go to the Kalam. When this Kalam of Allah is an attribute to Allah, this is wrong. Kalam of Allah is not an attribute to Allah. What's the attribute? Is that Allah is He has the absolute capability, obviously with infinite, without limit and unlimited capability of speech, of expressing what He wants in formalized speech in any language he chooses. Even we may envisage there's a divine language which we are unaware about it, which have maybe infinite many letters, infinite many variables. We don't know what it is, or in human languages. That's a divine attribute, and this we could call al-mutakallimiyya. Some people say maybe al-natiqiyya. I don't prefer the word natiqiyya because mutakallimiyya is a little bit better than natiqiyya. Why? The philosopher said that the human being, الإنسان حيوان ناطق, a speech capable or a natiq, an uttering animal. The other animals are that. But mantiq could mean the way to express yourself, which is not necessary in kalam, not necessary in language. How do we know that? That, for example, Sulaiman was taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala directly, and you have to understand mantiq al-tayr. So I prefer to use the word not kalam al-tayr, mantiq al-tayr.
So hold on.
Kalam is something higher, but we could call it al-natiqiyya, but it's better to call al-mutakallimiyya.
Let's clarify this. So the word natiq can indicate a type of
expressing, not necessarily in letters and in formalized language and grammar.
But this is what many
but Allah can report it as if it is someone speaking. Like قالت نملة يا نملة ادخلوا مساكنكم. And an ant said to the other ants, get in your houses under the ground, otherwise Sulaiman and his army will crush you. But we see how the Naml communicate. They don't utter sounds. They move certain movement, right? Take a circle, do this, and the other ant understand these symbols.
So for the ants, the word kalima.
The same for the bees. The same for other things.
Is the word natiq used for ants in the Quran for their?
Yeah, منطق الطير.
But isn't the word kalima or kalam used metaphorically to mean communicate without speech in the Quran
Yeah,
as well?
yeah, that's something else. But let's say just in the universe around us, there seem to be kalam is a little bit higher language with is a formal kalam with a grammar.
So is Allah
While
mutakallim?
mantiq could be lower. So we could say that as animals have mantiq, but they don't have kalam.
So Allah has kalam. Allah is a mutakallim.
No, I'm just saying I prefer to call human beings is حيوان متكلم, not حيوان ناطق. That's just a preference, just a suggestion.
No, but I mean for Allah. For Allah, what do
For Allah, because he has the article متكلمية, someone here, الناطقية also. But I prefer متكلمية.
But does Allah speak via sounds and letters? This is what we mean.
Leave that. That we come to that later. This is a divine attribute. Now, he gives a certain kalam, like an ayah of the Quran. Yeah? Or
Yes.
make a pen of fire, maybe a laser beam, we don't know, or something like that, to write on the tablet for Musa. According to the Old Testament, like a pen of fire came and engraved in the tablets. The tablets are unfortunately lost. They are in the Ark of the Covenant, and the Ark is somewhere. Nobody knows. I have an idea, but that's not actually.
They say it's in Turkey, Ustad, huh?
No, it's not. It's not in Turkey. It's most likely in the Jordan side. But one day we can go through that. I have some idea of something called the Jeremiah project, but not now.
We'll talk about this.
So the result of this capability, an action of kalam is happening. And that action of kalam is a certain kalam, a certain verse, a certain ayah, a certain surah, a certain Ya Musa, inni ana Allahu la ilaha illa ana, the fire, expressed in Arabic, but in that time he spoke to Musa in his language. Most likely the language which was he using is some kind of proto-Hebrew, or
possibly Egyptian, possibly
Coptic, or maybe the lingua franca of the area, which is Akkadian. We don't.
Was Akkadian lingua franca of that?
Lingua franca. It was in Iraq. It was in Palestine. It was in the Hittite. All of that area. It may be going all the way to Korea and China if they do trade and buy and sell tin and things like that. That was the lingua franca of the business at that time. Not the Coptic, the Egyptian, not even the old Aramaic or the Babylonic, but the Akkadian. Which later on developed into Babylonian and so on, and Aramaic and things like that. Anyway, he spoke to them in a language, a translation Arabic, because Allah is the translator, his translation is absolutely perfect. Nobody should object to it. And this is a bridge, because there was a long discussion in the Old Testament to give him the new name of Allah, the nature of Allah, many information, and the Quran summarizes in simple. Inni ana Allahu la ilaha illa ana fa'budni wa aqim as-salata li That's it. It's enough. And the Arabic language can accommodate for that. And the development of thoughts and monotheism over the time is sufficient to abridge that into this one sentence. There it was a long discussion until Musa understood what's going on in the first place. So we have that speech, the action of speaking, bringing what in the divine self, the meaning, conveying it to her. And then the one who comes outside, which you see engraved on the tablet or written in the parchment and so on, is the result of the kalam, like the Mukhluq. So that what in the parchment, that one in the tablets, is something mutakallam bihi, something spoken out, the result of speaking, exactly like the kun fayakun. Case of the action is the khalq. And the result of the action is something separate from the divine being, which is called, because it's a separate entity, and then we can recognize it. In the case of speech, it's difficult to recognize because it has to be engraved in a tablet, but it is separate. The tablet is not a divine entity. The engravement refers like a reference to what is the meaning in that language in the divine being. But that's the reason Kalam is a little bit difficult to understand. It's not like Khalq, where we understand he blow into the and it flies like a bird. It's a material separate from Isa and separate from the divine. So that have mutakallimiyya, the action of kalam, and the result of the action, which is called a speech, a kalam. And that's the speech. Kalamullah is that one, the one who asking for asylum hears from the messenger of Allah. It is not the act. The act is done before. Because he hears certain ayahs were revealed maybe a day before, maybe 5 years before, maybe 10 years before. It's already done, but that's the result. The result is separate from the entity. That this is definitely muhdath. Is not there before the time in eternity, by the evidence of the Quran itself. Because if the people would have scanned the Quran and realized that the Quran will give them the necessary hint to find the way, they would have not gotten in such philosophical discussion until after they have seen that, and then they can deduce from that the correct philosophy. What the Quran says, وَمَا يَأْتِيهِم مِّن ذِكْرٍ مِّن رَبِّهِم ماذا؟ محدث.
خلاص, finished.
إلا كان به مستهزئون. Now dhikr, someone say dhikr. No, we know that the dhikr in that case includes the Quran, includes the Torah, yeah, and include the meaning of the Sunnah given to Muhammad, but this is revealed to him, not necessarily as a kalam, maybe it's just a meaning in his heart, whatever it is. But the dhikr encompasses definitely the Quran and definitely the other things which can be described as a speech of Allah written. Now there will be certain various issues about that. One issue is how the kalam emerged from the divine being into outside, and that's it. Come up from the divine out. That may be impossible to describe. Maybe impossible to describe. The main issue for the Kalimin Fast is that they said they got stuck that there cannot be any event in the being of Allah. Allah cannot be being speaking now. It must be he was speaking the Quran before the beginning of time. The Quran must be there, some kind of ma'na nafsi. And then at the time Muhammad, it can be transferred somehow, but how would it transfer? Who transferred it? Did it transfer by itself? It's impossible. Did it come out the divine without any divine action, out of necessity? Then Allah is not speaking freely. It's under duress. So what does it mean? It has to be done at that moment. That's what they call qiyam al-hawadith billah. Can events be happening in the divine being? And this is the main problem which has happened in the discussion of mutakallimin. Because why was there a problem? Because they studied the issue. They wanted to prove from the what see in the universe that there is necessarily a creator. And but we saw that in everything around us, there are events happening. Yeah, human beings have events, hand moving, someone is born and dies. Sometimes this whole being is disappearing and coming, but sometimes changing in the being and so continuously, and change after change. And they wanted, they constructed a proof. They claim it's a proof, but it's a fallacy, false one. Maybe we should check. The best exposition of such a proof is that any entity in which the hadith and the hadith after hadith after hadith must be, the entity itself must be hadith. That's the conclusion. The problem with that, the way they made the proof is relying on a certain like limit processes, which at the time were not well understood. And Ibn Taymiyyah criticized that. And this is one point he is rightly criticizing. Also, the Karamiyah criticized that, but the people at the time could not settle the issue properly. What the real statement is really what is never devoid of hawadith, meaning what is contingent, must be itself hadith. Whatever, never void of hawadith. His whole existence starts with hadith and so on. But that's what to be proven. If they have started the other way with the philosophy start, which is the correct way, which avoid the issue of time, and the time will be settled later, but that bring you in the nightmare of time after time. Imagine a clock clicking now, a clock before. If you go back, question, can go that without beginning, or it must be the beginning, the first clock strike ever?
Say that again, Ustad. Repeat that again, please.
The time series. An event conditioned by another condition. But let's assume Ibn Taymiyyah said it is possible to have a universe created, and before that another universe created, and before that without beginning, because he said the condition, the universe number one is not necessarily conditioned by number two. They're independent, and the number two is independent, number three, etc. So it can be an infinite series, but it's a fallacy, because the order that this one is number one is after number two it could not have been called number one unless number two has been before him. So there's a condition. It has the previous one as a condition. And the one period. So this chain of condition must end somewhere in a beginning. That's the infinite regress. Otherwise, the chain is empty. It's a void chain. It is a fake chain. That's the principle of infinite regress. That's the way to go. It's more difficult, but the proof of the mutakallimin that everything, the things which have events and events and events is necessarily created is not a correct proof. The way they made it is not a correct. It has to be done in a more demanding and difficult way. And based on that, they say, since Allah is the creator, he cannot have event in himself. So there will be no events in the divine being whatsoever. There will be events in the divine being itself. So he's frozen a state of in the state of the initial state of eternity. No, this means by necessity, all action of Khalq, which we see now, are already done there in the point of eternity. And then that is that. Then I don't know how they explain that they have and they usually phrase that way. The decision to create something or have this happen at that time is made in eternity, outside time, so that but made under the condition that it will materialize and be realized at its appropriate time. Such words are empty. It's just playing games. What means it will materialize at its appropriate time? How that event knows that it's the appropriate time it comes out. Essentially, it will be absolute fatalism. Everything is based on a series of conditions, and there's no Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a dead, blind, deaf nature. He has no free will.
Yeah.
So that's who, but also the philosopher got stuck in that problem because also said that the one cannot have even events in itself for other reasons.
Fakhr al-Razi mentioned this in his tafsir about Hisham ibn al-Hakam, right? In his Kalam points.
Exactly.
Before.
And then he could not answer and say, oh, we remain with the majority of the ummah in the point of view about the knowledge. But look in the Quran says, for example, Allah refused that, showing there is some problem in this argument. You should have meaning, go and study more accurately. When you say, for example, about the ilm, وَمَا تَسْقُطُ مِنْ وَرَقَةٍ إِلَّا يَعْلَمُهَا. You use the verb تسقط. So when the leaf falls, he knows that it has fallen. Before it falls, he knows it's there. And before it has even emerged, because the leaf is not there from eternity, it's just emerged before that, maybe a year before, 10 years, 100 years before. Yeah? Yes. And was hanging with the tree. So before it emerges, it will emerge now. But the moment it emerges, it's emerging now. Then staying. And it falls, he knows it has fallen now. If he doesn't know that it has fallen now, meaning he's ignorant, he doesn't know what's going on at the moment. So there's no escape from that. And the Quran tells you clearly, but the people preferred their faulty evidence about that the bodies around us are full events. That's just the fact that they have events mean they are created is not a correct conclusion. That they have events and from their beginning, and they have beginning, that they have a beginning in time and for the events is meaning that they are created and they must be a beginner. And then you should apply then the process of infinite regress and come to the beginning, the starting point of time. And then you can solve the problem, provided you catch the beast called the problem of time from the horns and fight it and fix it down. And it's not easy, but we have also in the revelation, now not in the Quran directly, it's indirectly, the Quran hints you indirectly how it is, but the Prophet said it directly in the Hadith. Let me mention the Hadith because it's important for the issue of knowledge and Islam. The Hadith is an ahad, so you cannot take it as an authority, definitely. But the Qara'in and the necessity of reason show they're strong, and also there are evidence showing Abu Huraira did not take it from people of the book because it's from Abu Huraira. And Abu Huraira is known to take from, he was sitting with Ka'b al-Ahbar for a long time, and definitely he had various statements, various information, and things that statements from people of the book, and it may have interfered in his mind with some speech of the Prophet. So he narrated things which we know with certitude it cannot be from the Prophet. Why? Because it's contradicting the Quran, and secondly, because no other Sahabi narrated. So it must be taken by Huraira mistakenly, not deliberately. I have no doubt that's not deliberate. Like, for example, the faulty hadith, were it not for Eve, Hawa, no female would betray her male or husband. We know with certitude that no hadith from Allah come with mentioning the name of the wife of Adam as Hawa. That's only in the Old Testament and the common literature of the people and the folk tales. That's number one. Secondly, Hawa never betrayed her husband. But in the Old Testament, she is the one who listened to the devil and pulled her husband in the problem.
Yes.
That's the betrayal. It's definitely false. It's a fabrication and a goddamn lie. So he took that from Ka'b al-Ahbar and he thought he hid it from Messenger of Allah and that's with Messenger of Allah. Initially, I thought the narrator from Abu Huraira, there was a Jew in the narration channel I saw first. I said maybe the Jew interfered in his mind. Then I found all major narrators of Abu Huraira, 7, 8 of the first class one, all narrating the same. So the problem is Abu Huraira and the people with whom he was sitting. But this hadith I'm mentioning now is nowhere to be found in all the New Testament or any previous culture. It's a very amazing hadith. I say it's a singular hadith, so you cannot say qat'i in that sense. But all these corroborating evidences make me certain that it is from Allah. It says the following. It starts very innocently. Hadith Qudsi. The Messenger of Allah reporting what Allah is saying, but not in a wording of the Quran, worded by himself. يقول الله يؤذين ابن آدم. The son of Adam is hurting me, or insulting me, or injuring me. He says, Ya khaybat ad-dahr. What a miserable time. People usually say that, oh, goddamn time. Especially the Arab. Khaybat ad-dahr. All the problems because of the passage of time. Ya khaybat ad-dahr. And sometimes they swear at the dahr. Okay. Essentially, they are objecting to the qada, what's happening in the universe. And we know ultimately what happening is with Allah's permission. So they are attacking Allah. But the explanation is not like that here. Now it comes the amazing one, which I would say that by itself is an evidence for Prophet Muhammad could be sufficient by itself.
Very good. Very
now he says that I am the time. What's meaning I am the time? The time is that we perceive as the sequence of events and we measure with clocks. It cannot be Allah like that. They explain what I mean. أقلب الليل والنهار بأمري. I turn day and night by my command. So the time, as we perceive it and measure clock, is the sequence of divine action. That's the meaning of Dahr.
Wow.
If you look at that, it solves your problem. Together with another hadith, which I'll mention in a moment. So the usual statement we say, Allah is in time is wrong. It can't be. Allah is outside time is wrong. It can be. No, outside time does not make any sense. What does it make sense? He is the time. The time is nothing than the expression of his activity. So he is the absolute opposite of the divine being of the philosophers and the divine being of the mutakallimin. The rigid, inactive, stable in eternity, stable in its being. It cannot be split, cannot die, cannot disappear. But his activity is continuous. Wow. Starting with the fundamental one, which ended eternity and started time.
His act never stops. It's always continuing.
And will continue forever in the front. And the front will open. There's no end. There's no end. It's not I once saw a movie. It's a joke, obviously. People were history, he described history, and they say, and they're riding on horses, and then there's a wall saying end of time. There's no wall. The future is open. The past is closed, it has a beginning. How do we know that? It's another amazing hadith. It's not from Abu Hurairah, for someone else. For some reason, Allah told the Wadi Tamim were present and some people from Yemen. That's most likely in his last year, maybe even before Hajjat al-Wada. People were coming, hearing the Messenger of Allah will perform Hajj, and they were coming to Medina to follow with him from Medina to Makkah to see everything. And then he said, Ya Bani Tamim, اقبلوا البشارة. These Bani Tamim is from Najd, from my area, and the people of Najd are rough and very hard-hearted. They say, you gave us a bishara, give us. They want something. They think bishara, he will give them camels or money or something like that. Then he turned to the Yemen. Ya Ahl al-Yaman, iqbalu al-bishara. The Yemeni are wise and gentle. They kicked the butt of the America recently in the Bab al-Mandab. But we are not discussing politics today.
Alhamdulillah.
The Yemeni noticed that. What happened to what you say? قبلنا And we have come to ask you about the beginning of this amr, this current state of affair.
Very
The
nice.
word current state of affair is the word used by philosophers and to discuss the whole reality, the whole universe. The state of affair, the universe around us, the whole reality. كيف بدأ this whole reality, how it emerged. كيف بدأ هذا الأمر, how this whole reality emerged.
Subhanallah.
A very deep question. So what he said? كان الله ولم يكن شيء قبله. Allah existed and nothing was before him. And there's a narration with معه ونريشن عنده, with him and at him. But the correct narration is قبله. ليش? Because there are other hadith mentioning this. Allah supplicating Allah saying اللهم أنت الأول فليس قبلك شيء. You are the first. Nothing is before you.
Nothing is before you.
وأنت الآخر فليس بعدك شيء. That's different. We will discuss that. وأنت الظاهر فليس فوقك شيء. You are the external or the transcendent. Nothing is more far away and transcendent than you. Far, far away. Infinitely far in some sense. وأنت الباطن. You are the most intrinsic or internal. Nothing closer than you. You are almost touching or touching.
Wow.
هو الأول والآخر والظاهر والباطن وهو بكل شيء عليم. He is the first, the last, the transcendent, the most external, and the batin, the most internal or intrinsic or internal. And he knows everything. وهو بكل شيء عليم. That's the ayah in the beginning of one of the surah. I don't remember the surah name. So that's the beginning of the Amr. Notice the hadith in the correct wording. There's some wavering in the wording. وكتب وكان عرشه على الماء. We'll come to the arsh in another episode. That's very important. Arsh is a metaphor for the kingdom. It's not the throne, nor it's a heavenly body like some faulty hadith may indicate and some faulty minds may think. But anyway, وكان عرشه على الماء. What is this ماء? We have to explain. We discussed in tafsir, you may have remembered, but it's not an issue today. It's a very deep issue. وكتب في الذكر كل شيء. He wrote everything or مقادير كل شيء in ذكر. In the ذكر. The ذكر here is the fundamental choice of the divine. كتب كل شيء. كتب مقادير. Wrote, shows a certain universe and its description and detail there and decided. كتب here means made a decision. Because some people say, I was once discussing with one of these Salafi, who because of the way they look to things, I think some of them sink to the level of donkeys, leave the level of humanity. They said, Ibn Abbas said that he wrote in the Lawh al-Mahfuz. And then there's a narration from it, that's most likely faulty, that is 70 years long and so on. Say, okay, so Allah needs this Lawh al-Mahfuz and the pen to write. Lawh outside himself, and he woke up. Where the Lawh al-Mahfuz came from? Is it created, not created? He got stuck. Because the people do not think in a metaphorical term. The word kataba could be command, could be made obligation, could be recorded something. والذكر is not necessarily لوح المحفوظ. حتى لوح المحفوظ is not necessarily a لوح. Some metaphor for something in which things can be fixed. And it could be a لوح in the case of Quran. There's something else. So he got stuck, the poor guy. Then I guided him so that I don't want him to become a kafir ultimately because he did not use his brain properly. But that's it. So ثم خلق, and then he created heaven and earth. So there's a starting point. Someone say, but our imagination, now we come how we get into trapped because we have a finite mind. We get trapped in various types of illusion. One illusion we know and everyone recognizes easily is the optical illusion. And there are many things in the internet. You can take a look to some of these pictures. It is shocking. Yeah.
Yes.
Your vision, because of perspective and things that can fool you. You know it is not that what you see, but it's still you see it. You cannot get out of it.
Yeah.
That's one. Another one is the mental optical illusion. How the mental optical illusion comes is that, yeah, I can go the time yesterday and the day before yesterday. And then I imagine go more and more and more. Then I say I can't go that ad infinitum. The same way I go tomorrow, one day after tomorrow, ad infinitum, without end. And here I can't go without beginning. This is the illusion, because here you have to have a beginning. You started the count from here. You have the wrong beginning. In the case of going back in the past, you are starting with now, but now is not the correct beginning. It's the wrong one. But you are fooled. Your mental eye, the internal, fools you. And you think you can go the same way you're going in the future. In the future, the beginning is today. Tomorrow comes based on today. And the one after that based on that. That's okay. That goes. No problem. No contradiction. But that one is not. Because today is the result of yesterday. And yesterday is the result of the day before, etc. And it has to end by necessity of reason and infinite regress. Someone say, what's before that? There's no before. ليس قبلك شيء. It's an impossibility. But your brain, the way it works, the mental optic, how you see, you close your eye, try to imagine it. Obviously, imagine it in a space-time shape. Regarding as going back and back, the same way you go left and left and left, the same way you compare it, and this again how you are fooled about that, and you may draw it in a XY axis, that's a space axis, that's a time axis. Whatever you do, you will be fooled if you think this way, and then you come to the absolute zero of time and say, what is before that? There's no before that. It's an impossibility. It's just a mental optical illusion. Let me give you an example which is easier to see where is the illusion comes. If you measure the temperature of a gas, assume you have an ideal gas, an absolute ideal gas, and you measure. Obviously, real gases are ideal until it is very cold, and then things become more complicated physically. But in principle, you can make the calculation and go with the temperature lower, approaching the temperature called absolute zero. Until you come to, actually, we never reach absolute zero, because absolute zero means absolute nothingness. Well, that does not exist. Absolute empty space with no fields, no energy. Nothing in the universe is like that. So we'll never reach there. Usually, you don't have a problem to recognize that's the starting point. I cannot go back more. Usually, although still you have some kind of feeling, there's maybe a negative absolute temperature. There's no negative absolute temperature in that sense. But it's easier here, because you see the process in front of your eyes. Here you don't see it in front of your eyes. It goes, and then it goes, I can't see. It's going behind the horizon, behind my horizon. And it fools you by this. So it ends there. ليس قبلك شيء, meaning it doesn't exist. An impossibility is a non-entity. Although you say قبلك, use the word قبل, but there's no قبل. That is, using the word قبل create what I call semantic or linguistic illusion. Because usually we use قبل, something is before something.
Yeah.
That's okay. It exists. So we think, if I ask you, what's before eternity, the point of eternity? Seems to be a legitimate question. Here it is not legitimate, because this is the absolute beginning. Nothing before that. أنت الأول فليس قبلك شيء. In the other side, it's okay. There's no problem. There will be no problem of infinite regress. أنت الآخر ليس بعدك شيء. But there's no بعد, because tomorrow there's the day after tomorrow, another day after tomorrow, another day after tomorrow. The earth has disappeared. There is another time measure. Let's invent a time measure that goes at infinity. It never ends. Meaning, أنت الآخر ليس بعدك شيء, meaning you are eternal. So you are abadi. Actually, in Arabic, we have a difference between eternal in the past, the point in eternity, and the eternal in the future. And that's the reason from finite time, if you want to approach the point of the point of eternity, the 0 point of absolute time, if you want to approach it, we cannot reach it. We have to go through a limit process, because there is a singularity. That's a crystal singularity. Let me give another mathematical example to there. Sure. You can define the logarithm of natural base or logarithm base 10. People develop it by how can I convert by multiplication into addition and so on. That's how it started, but now we know how to define it generally. The logarithm is defined for positive number initially, positive real numbers. If you go towards 0, the logarithm, the log base 10 or any base, become more negative, and negative go down, negative. You never reach 0, but if you reach 0 in the limit, it go to minus infinity. Can the logarithm be defined to negative numbers in the left axis? Now we're talking about abstract numbers, abstract mathematics. mathematician has a way to extend functions of real numbers into the complex plane. There's a procedure well established and well proven and consistent. You can extend it everywhere except the negative axis. The definition domain of the complex logarithm is the whole plane with the cut. It's called the cut plane. The negative axis is cut out. It's impossible to define it there. Actually, it's more complex than that. It is not only one plane, it is multiple plane, infinite many, because it's a periodical function in the complex, but none of them can cross over the negative axis. It's defined the negative axis. They have to jump over the negative. The moment you jump over the negative axis, the logarithm jump by a certain number. It's a jumping point. It cannot be defined. It's impossible to define whatever you can do. This is a model of something which is not in the domain of that function. That's obviously just a model to visualize that that's can be consistent and can be proven to be impossible. There's no way you can define the logarithm. You can define it for complex numbers, real and imaginary, all of them except the negative axis. So that solved the problem. Allah exists in the beginning, in eternity. In eternity, He has the knowledge which we call, because the divine knowledge is two types, huduri and husuli. The one which happens and the one which is hadir. In eternity, it's only huduri and knowledge of Himself, knowledge of all abstract things, which we don't know what they are, knowledge of mathematics, of all necessities of logic and reason, roughly, which indicates, and all possible creatable universes. That's it. We cannot imagine to be in the point of eternity because we are being created in time. We cannot imagine ourselves frozen in time. Otherwise, are dead essentially. We cannot imagine. We lose consciousness. But the divine is different. He understands that situation completely. In that point of eternity, because we said He shows a certain universe with certain parameter with a certain purpose. He could have chosen otherwise. So He chose by free will. It must be a free choice. That spontaneously, that choice, the singularity and the universe start. Maybe not this one, maybe a universe before that, and it crashed and then it exploded, but it has to be starting somewhere. So when Penrose say that this universe emerged from previous one, he contradicts the necessity of reason. He's undermining the principle of infinite regress without knowing it. Obviously, he's trying to escape admitting that there is a divine being which has to create. There's no other way. There must be someone doing it spontaneously with free will. There's no way for dead, blind, deaf nature to start anything. So he's running away from God, trying to make it. Say the Hindu solution is very nice. It is a beginning has no end, no beginning and no end. It's circular universe. It doesn't exist. It's just an illusion of mental optical illusion or a linguistic fallacy and illusion. That's it. After that, Allah is completely dynamic. He's always dynamic. He's the complete opposite of the God of the Mutakallimin and the God. And then the issues of created, not created, and so on do not play any role anymore. It does not play anymore. Anymore. The only thing some could object is that this first action, which started the singularity, that's a spontaneous action. It is self-explanatory. We have to postulate a spontaneous action, because if you don't postulate, it's only an action based on a necessity. It has to have a beginning. The beginning has to be spontaneous. If it's not spontaneous, it cannot create anything. So if we do not accept that and postulate it as a fundamental postulate, as we accept that all these contingent beings and universes must go to an existing one initial being, no escape from that. If we don't accept that, then we can't accept anything. Then everything is contradictory. How to understand that? The only says it, this spontaneous, the first action, this absolutely spontaneous action is known to Allah and self-explanatory. The same like the principle of sufficient reason. The general formulation of Spinoza is that everything needs explanation. This is the false statement. because the statement itself, this need an explanation, cannot be explained. So it becomes impossible, become circular. So it must be solid. Everything which is not self-explanatory needs an explanation. Like say, every existing thing which is not necessary needs an explanation going to a necessary being. The necessary existing does not need explanation because that's by definition. You have to have ending by necessity. And the same with activity, you have to understand a spontaneous one which cannot be explained. It's self-explanatory. It's by itself. It's the absolute freedom and so spontaneity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this Tajdeed Quran is the most stressed attribute of Allah. فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. لو شاء الله, he wants that. He may want that. He doesn't want that. He may believe that. He may delay his decision. Like in Surah Tawbah.
This one's very good.
About the three who have been postponed. Say, وآخرون مرجون لأمر الله. Others postponed to the decision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إما يعذبهم وإما يتوب عليهم. أو إما يتوب عليهم وإما يعذبهم. If you have the Mus'haf open. So others postponed to the decision of Allah. Allah is capable of postponing his decision, keeping things open. If things are kept open at this moment, for any moment in time, the future is open in the sense that things are kept open. If he decides something to happen in the future, if he decides something, then it's inevitably going to happen. Then we can ask, will it happen in the future? If we know that he has decided, now we say yes. And the question, is this happening? The question of Aristotle is, tomorrow will be a sea battle near Sicily, for example. Tomorrow will be a sea battle. Can we attribute to that the value of true and false? The problem with Aristotle, he thought this is the real statement which have an answer of false or true. No, it's not a real statement. It's only a real statement if already the decision by the one who, because the battle has not happened yet and the future is not decided yet. Unless it's been decided by Allah, we may know it, then we can say it is true or false. We may not know, say we don't know. It's unknowable for us, but knowable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Knowable because he made the decision. If it's not, then he knows it is open and he will decide it later. Like these three who are postponed, he for the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, either he punish them or he forgive them. And that which has happened in that case later, 50 days later. The hikmah for that, in that case, we know that he postponed them to test them will they endure the temptation. Because one of them received a letter from the king of Ghassan, say, we hear that the poet, Ka'b ibn Malik, received the letter, and we hear that your companion, meaning the Prophet has forsaken you and ordered the people not to talk to you. So you are treated like a dog. Come, we will treat you gently. Ka'b Malik said, I saw that, said, this is one of the tests of Allah, he throw it in the fire. The royal letter of the king of Ghassan in Damascus. So Allah knew these things would come. Some of them will come, some be in the planning, and postponed how this one react, meaning he will react in freedom. Possibly this and possibly this. If he chooses the right way, he will be forgiven. If he doesn't choose, he will be condemned and punished. But anyway, we're not discussing this specific case, the fundamental principle that Allah is capable of postponing a decision. So we could say, according to what's revealed in the Quran, and necessity of reason, Allah is an active agent. Continuously acting.
Yes.
And his first act is that what ended the point of eternity and infinitesimal. That's obviously a very difficult mathematical expression. Actually, from our side, we look like it's a limit, but we could express it in infinitesimal short time. Whatever, I prefer using the language of limit because it's safer. There's a possibility to develop mathematics with so-called infinitely small quantity and things that is possible, but it is a very hairy and dangerous way of doing things. That was the way they were doing calculus and integration differentiation in the 19th century, the early 20th century, but then later on they have abolished that and stuck to limits because that the system is clear and how to define them is clear and how to control them is clear. While this infinitesimal small quantity, and they may be smaller than another one, and smaller of second order and third order, this is a nightmare. It seems to be possible to do, but it's better to avoid. So if you wish to say, the first action happened infinitesimal time away, 0 time, essentially, 0 distance of time after eternity. If you can imagine or speak like that. Only doing it really in a mathematical way with the limits is only the correct way. And that's the point where people in time past were struggling. By the way, limits and so on, they were a problem. over the history of humanity, they were settled only a few centuries ago. Until
Wow.
very recently, the issue, for example, the famous paradox of the arrow, was one philosopher said, okay, if I shoot an arrow 100 meters, it takes maybe 1 second. But let us consider, for example, if it is 1 second, then if 50 meters, it must be half second. Okay. Then the other half of that is 25 meters, must be a quarter second. So we have half a second, quarter second, and so on. Say there are so many numbers. If we add them, must be infinity. So the arrow should never reach. What's the problem with this argument? In time past, there was a big paradox. The problem with this argument is that the people were not able to sum half plus quarter plus 1/8, 1/16, etc., etc. They were not yet capable of treating infinite series and summing them properly. Now kids in the school do it. This is geometric series. You can sum it easily, and the sum will be exactly 1 second, exactly like the arrow going in 1 second. There's no paradox. But the way he divided it, and this portion, a portion, a portion, and the sum of infinite many portion must be infinite, because he doesn't know how to make infinite sums. There was no theory of sums like that yet developed, which is wavering arguments. It's not clear to the people until it was clarified 2 or 3 centuries back. Then things became clearer. So these issues of limits and infinities and things shrinking down to a zero or something like that are very difficult for the time. But do you know that even the zero itself as a number was inventing the zero, or finding that a number could the number zero could be defined consistently took several thousand of years for humans. Yeah. Only the Arabs and Muslims invented that recently.
Yes.
Recently meaning like 1,000 years ago from now on. Before that, it was not. People have what's number zero? What's zero? I know 1 is 1, 2, 3. 1, 2 is 1 that plus 1. But what's zero? What is this? What does it mean? Because it's counting. I can count things, but not count nothing until the idea was streamlined, and then we know that by taking away, and then we define negative numbers and things like that. So that's I'm not blaming but I'm blaming the modern time. In modern time, that they don't educate themselves in formal logic, in modal logic, and in mathematics, plus the recent achievement of philosophy, and benefit from that, and see what the classics have made and benefit from it. By the way, the classic, for example, Ibn Sina in a philosophical part, did enormous achievement in existence of proof of Allah based on the infinite regressive issue and necessarily existing with avoiding going to the problem of time.
So Ibn Sina solved the issue of time as well?
No,
no. I see.
The only modern ones addressed that, but in this development with the infinite regress and so on, and development this way, I think I put a final touch on some of it. But some philosophers have discussed these various models of time. That time is having no beginning, or it has a beginning, but then there's the problem how to get there, things like that. But if you combine that with mathematics and the principle of the impossibility of infinite regress of conditions, of conditional necessity condition. You usually say the infinite regress of علل معلولات. This A is having a cause, or عله B, and B has a cause C, etc. You don't need to have a عله, because عله is sufficient, is necessary and sufficient. You don't need to have sufficient. It's enough to be a عله. B is a عله of A, and C is a عله of B, and so on. Is a condition, necessary condition for B. Only the necessary condition is enough. So only I have slimmed it down to that. I wrote it somewhere. I think I have it writing, and I have a video or a recording of the clubhouse discussing this. And brother Lax may have a recording for that. So that's make it more precise. Just you need only that this is a chain of conditions, just a condition. A is conditioned by B necessarily, and B is conditioned by C, and so on. It must end somewhere in something which is unconditioned. It can't go infinity. And if someone falls in the trap to make that go infinity, it is just because of mental illusion. Because the Burhan, it can be proven by a proof by Ibn Sina, very much similar to mathematical proofs. That's the concept time. Now we'll go back to this issue of Quran. So all of that actually say because they stuck with the problem that they cannot envisage that is what they call events and accidents happen in the being of Allah. I think this contradicts him being eternal and being uncreated. No, it doesn't.
Accidents can happen with the being of Allah.
That's how it is. If you say a leaf falls and he knows that it has fallen now, what do you call that? Event, accident, call it whatever you want. There's a change in the knowledge, not in the attribute, not in the previously established knowledge.
Not a change within the essence, you mean?
It's not an essence, not an attribute, nothing. It's just a change in the relation. It has fallen now.
And another example we can give is because people find this problem.
Same with the Khalq.
Yeah.
They say
I was going to say that.
They say all action of Khalq, which is happening until all eternity in the future, that's even worse. Or until Yawm al-Qiyamah, as the Hadith say, are already done and decided in the point of eternity, outside time. Yeah. And then the decision is made, it will happen to that specific time. What means it happens at that specific time? How does the action know to be active and do the job at that time? Essentially, the thing will happen and the Khalq will happen without anything initiating it at the moment. Or because the action of creation, the Khalq, in the eternity is the beginning, is the illah, the cause for this being to be, and the illah cannot be separated from ma'lul. So all things must be eternal. There's no escape. In that sense, this is the divide. And Allah says clearly in the Quran, just let the Quran guide you and leave these, and don't fall in the trap of optical illusion is easy to control, but in mental optical illusion and semantic illusions. Let me give you some example over here, because I think that word linguistic or semantic illusions is, I think I have invented that. I don't remember seeing anyone say that. I gave an example last time. I will give one example.
Give one more example, inshallah. Yes.
One example. That's we can say the square circle. It seems to be we are naming something. In reality, there is no such existence. It's an impossibility.
Impossibility.
But because it is constructed linguistically as it's something, yeah.
And similarly, by analogy, when we say what,
let me give it. So it's because all judgment of the mind is either a single item, so your concepts, تصورات, or concepts, Begriffe in German, in English, concepts, like lion, circle, and so on. This is a concept, something, or something, a predicate related to subject and predicate, like Barhat is Kurdish. Genetically, Barhash is good, or Barhash is Kurdish speaking. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So Barhat is an entity. Who is Barhat? This guy. Point to him. Kurdish, we know Kurdish meaning belong to a certain genealogical group and language and ethnic group defined elsewhere. It exists. And what I'm asserting there, that the description of being Kurdish applies to Barhat. It's one of these codes. Kurdish. That's called statement. So we have تصورات and ahkam. We have concepts and we have statement or judgments. Good? Agree? Now, linguistically, I can construct statements, which linguistic was in language is easy. It is something in English, something is something, or are something if it's a plural. But let's say simple is something. And if it is not like if someone speaks English, how to transfer it in the standard form? Omar is English speaker. Instead of speaks English, is an English speaker. So English speaker applies to Omar with the is. So this is standard form. In Arabic, we don't have is. We have mubtada and khabar. We have called the nominal sentence in which the is hidden, is not there. Only in the past it become kana, then become the so-called af'al naqisa, kana, sara, yeah. Okay. So that's the way it's in Arabic and in English and so on, and in form. That's a formal language way. They make a statement this way. They rephrase everything so that is kada. And if it is like a verb, then the verb is making a name out of it and an attribute. Like it says, speaks English is English speaker. Runs fast is fast runner, etc. Yeah? Good. Now I'll give you the following one. Let's see if you can detect the disease. this statement, the statement referencing to itself, you see the danger. The moment you reference something in itself, you alarm clock. Watch, there's an alarm. But let's say you are a person who I never have seen that before, and you are fooled by that. This statement is false. Now, from the logic, now this statement is either true or false. Barhat is Kurdish. If he's Kurdish, that's true. If he's not Kurdish, that's false. True or false? But this statement is false. There's a problem with this one, because if that construction is really a statement, it must be either false or true. So if it is true, then it is false. And if it's false, then it is true. Contradictory. So the construction, which looks linguistically, it fools you at first that it's really a bona fide, genuine statement. It's not a statement. It's a linguistic or semantic illusion.
I see.
Actually, the disease is in the first part. The word this statement is not an item. It's not an entity. It's a non-entity. Self-reference as an impossibility. That's essentially hidden. But if you take it more simple way, it is if structured as a statement is definitely a fallacy.
Wow.
So if the self-reference, nothing can be said about the self-reference. If you say something, you transgress the limit, and then you fall in the trap of linguistic. Another example, this is essentially that either item, it goes back to the item. Item is either exist or it is an impossibility, but it looks linguistically acceptable, and it may fool someone to believe there's something like that. In reality, there's nothing. Exactly like, for example, the fallacy. What is before Allah? Because he has a beginning, the point for eternity. So must be something before that. No, there's not something before, because the point of eternity is the beginning of everything, and he is the beginning of everything. He's the necessity existing. Before that, it is just the language is fooling you, extending where it is impossible. It's like this statement is false or true. It's false. That's not a statement. It looks like a statement.
Due to the limitation of language, we are forced to use things such as before or qabl.
If we imagine there's a divine language, there will be no such illusion possible.
Exactly, because it's human language.
But that's going into ghaib, which we don't need. But in language we know, and the mind we know, which is finite, it can become bigger and bigger, and Yawm Al Qiyamah we will be increasing in knowledge, and but without end and limit. In every state there will be some type of illusions, which we need to struggle with and advance to a higher level of becoming more closer and similar to the divine. That will be one of the main pleasure there.
Well said. Exactly, that is the main pleasure.
That's the main pleasure. That's the main pleasure. Getting more knowledge, more closer to Allah, becoming more similar to Him. Kunu Rabbani, and you become Rabbani more and more and more and more.
Exactly.
So, axiomatically, if we go to the Quran and to the revelation before the Quran, it is very clear, no discussion about that, absolutely no discussion, that Allah is a dynamic in that sense. That the issue that events, what they call events, can't happen in everything, has to be clear. What do you mean event? Change in the essence, change of the attribute, cause is impossible. Anything contrary is necessary, existent. But absolute spontaneity of freedom does not. It's necessary. It's part of the definition of being necessary existing and being and spontaneity. Spontaneity. The spontaneity based that he's living and he has a comprehensive knowledge of himself and the possible universe. That's the ilm huduri. The ilm husuli, the which happens, is acquired as things happen in the outside. Some people say that means the events go back to him, affect him. They don't affect him. He is the one causing the events. He is the one, the passage of time. He is expressing himself in time. Nothing external, because there's nothing external there to start with which affect him. He's affecting everything.
The fallacy is this.
The fallacy is this.
Allah is, for example, sort of limited, and he's developing. This is how they try to make a fallacy.
That's fallacy. It's not.
Exactly.
It's not limited.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him absolutely free. The other alternative, a necessity existing, which is acting by necessity, I think it may be it's possible to construct a proof that is an impossibility in itself. But let's assume like that. If this cannot be the cosmological proof, say the origin of the universe cannot be a necessarily existing, deaf, blind, dead nature. It must be someone who makes choices. And the reason we conclude that in the cosmological proof is that the universe is having certain initial conditions and initial parameters which are freely choosable. So we must have a free agent choosing it. Some atheists try to run away from that by saying, there are actually all these universes can be realized, and we happen to be accidental in one of them. It doesn't solve the problem. They make the problem of one universe, which need to be the initial condition be chosen for it to come into existence, make it infinitely more problematic, because each one of that is contingent and needs an explanation. And putting them together, putting contingent with contingent, bring a complex entity which is contingent and even weaker than the separate part. And then adding more, so you become infinitely weaker, infinitely more contingent, not the opposite. But it's a fallacy. Think, by accident, we are in this one. It's no miracle. We are not talking about miracle. How this came to existence. First, we're not talking about miracles or not miracle, or fine-tuning and nice things. How this choice is being made. They say arbitrarily, by accident. All of choices have been made somehow. Each one has to be made. That they are arbitrary or not arbitrary, it doesn't solve the problem. Each one has to be made. Each one has to be made. There's no escape. So instead of solving a problem, the vicious problem of one universe, starting with certain chosen parameters, which neither it can be chosen because it was not existing yet, nor the laws themselves dictate that by necessity. It's a free parameter, really freely chosen, dictate that. Now we know it must be even fine-tuned, so it hints that the chooser is not only just a chooser. Yes, no, it's much more enormous than that. It's a very perfect and wise and comprehensive knowledge chooser, but it's a bonus, an icing on the cake. We just want to get to a chooser. That's enough. Then, because he's necessarily existing, his choice capabilities must be perfect, infinite many. So he's a perfect chooser, and he can fine-tune. But that's just icing on the cake. We don't need that really for the divided proof. So the fine-tuning is an overkill. It's good, but it's an overkill. We don't need the fine-tuning. We need that there's a tuning, there's a choice in the beginning. The parameter can have two values. One of them must be chosen. But we know most of these parameters are in a continuum interval. They have uncountable many choices. Must be some chooser. And in addition, the various parameters, they must be fine-tuned. Can't be done only by a chooser of comprehensive knowledge and wisdom. But this is an icing on the cake, that we could conclude that from the moment that there's a chooser, is necessarily existing, so he's an absolutely free and sovereign, and his knowledge must be the knowledge in eternity, huduri, the present, the immediate knowledge, which is part of his being in some sense, or encompassed in the meaning of his being, must be there. That's the perfect one. Either by philosophical analysis or by fine-tuning argument. We assume that the philosophical analysis is dearer to my heart. I just need the freedom of action, not a necessary action. Necessary action is not possible, most likely, for a necessary existing being. So dead, blind nature can never act. It will be dead, blind, and active for eternity. Essentially, it cannot exist then.
Definitely. So are the
So that's the way to go this problem. Not starting with this proof that God exists and so on. Why not go the other proof? We have prophethood and we have absolute evidence that this man cannot have. Let's say we have absolute evidence on hand, and we have in the case of the Quran, that this man could not have produced the Quran, nor could be the Arabs. Not could be any natural cause. So it must be from outside natural causes, which we call Allah. And he claims he's the creator of the universe. So let's assume that's well established and see what he has revealed and deduce from that some fundamental things. And based on that, build our philosophy. That's the right of it, because we
That's,
have
that's the,
an independent evidence go through the prophethood for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
otherwise revelation would be meaningless anyway.
Being meaningless anyway.
What's the point of revelation if
so why just discuss the what's the purpose of saying if Quran is created or muhdath or not muhdath? It's irrelevant. What does contain of meaning which make me understand the state of affairs, understand my position it, and is anything required for me or not? That's what is required. And that's the job.
Ustad, the Quran being created or uncreated links to other fundamental topics such as divine simplicity, attributes of Allah, is Jesus created, the foreknowledge of Allah.
All of that is settled with this.
All of them. It links to all of them. So it looks irrelevant, but the topics it links.
I know that's how it's emerged, but it is this way it is clear, because this is an existing being. The action, the spontaneous action, except the one which is absolutely spontaneous and initially, which is self-explanatory. Every one is explained by previous one, and every one of this hadith or created, if you wish to use the word created, or hadith. So even if we say Isa is the Kalam of Allah itself, which is nonsensical, because this is a metaphorical expression in the Hebrew language, and then later also in Islam adopted. We say this man is Kalimatullah, meaning he represents Kalimatullah, or he created by Kalimatullah. It can't be the Kalima itself. The Kalima itself is not a material being of cells and so on. And the Kalima transferring into that, just assume it transfer that. If the Kalima is created, the Muhdath, is no problem, it can transfer somehow miraculously by its own nature into such a being. But it's still a created being. It's still Abdullah wa Rasul. The problem is, say, the Kalima is not created, and what the Christian claim, the Trinitarian, and eternally generated, meaning it generated and produced in eternity. They don't say it's coexistent with Allah, but eternally generated. How can something eternal being eternally generated? Generated being post-eternity, even in physical time. So that's they got in that problem and got in the Trinity, which is impossible and eternally contradictory. So whatever the Kalima is, created, not created, it doesn't tell it. If it's not created, it can't tell anything else. It's impossible.
So are the actions of Allah created? It says Allah creates his actions. He is the doer.
No, يفعل action is spontaneous. That's for necessary existing. It's a feature of necessity. For finite being, they have to make their action, and the action is based on another action, and so on.
Yes, so but
it goes to the initial action creation of the universe. Everything goes back to that.
My point is this: the actions of the creator is originated as well. You can use the word muhdath as well for that. It's a hadith.
Yeah, because it's in time. The word muhdath meaning in time. It was not before, it happens now.
So it's created.
Created or muhdath, I don't care about these names. This is playing with words which do not make anything, because we said the word created, meaning in English or in Arabic, Khalq, this year we're talking about Arabic, Khalq, which is usually translated as created in English, meaning giving a form to something pre-existing. Essentially, that's it. That's the reason the whole universe and its beginning is creating ex nihilo, which is very difficult to control and work with it as well. But we can have the concept at least, and doesn't create any contradiction. But that's it. So it's an entity which was not as such as it is now before. That's a creation. Like the example given in the Quran, explicitly in the case of Isa, it's something happening in time, happening in Palestine at that time. He shapes from mud some birds, blow in them, and they fly away.
Very good example, actually. I like how you linked that.
That's it. That's an example of أخلق لكم من الطين كهيئة Allah used the word خلق. And he said, for example, about أصنام وتخلقون إفكا. You create you create fake things. You create you make fallacies. You create fallacies. Create, produce. All of these the same thing.
Very good. That makes sense.
And the same with the speech. You produce a speech which can be understood, and it is related to the one who spoke it, and the relation can never sever for all eternity, but it is separate. In the case of human speech, for example, we know you may write a piece of poetry and you pass away, and the piece of poetry is in the books, and the people know it has been originally made by this guy, but it's now in the books, and the guy is gone. is eaten by the worms that turn into dust and ashes, never to come back except Yawm al-Qiyamah. Still it is there. And if an atheist say he's gone for eternity, he will never come back. But this is his poetry is with us still. And there you go metaphorical, he's still alive in his poetry and blah, blah, blah. This is all nice wording and rhetorical expression to appeal to certain feelings and so on. But the reality is gone. This is, so it's separate from him. It's now in the books and in my memory and in someone else's memory. That's the reality of things. The divine speech, in that sense, is still belong to the divine, and the divine is eternal. Eternal in the beginning, and that's what you call azali in Arabic, and
Azali.
that's the azal, and eternal in the future, and never ending. Let's say never ending. So eternal usually in English means beginning, before the beginning of time, at the absolute zero of time, which we call the point of eternity. Point just an approximation. That's the way we represent it. If you may represent it as a closed loop, you represent it, they have various mathematical representation. You can represent it as a circle, and the circle can wide infinity, and still it is like the azal, the circle. What does it mean, a circle? How to imagine that? We have no way to imagine, but this is all the model we can imagine. And the best model is just a point. But it causes you heavy problems in your visual mental imagination. Imagining that's a cross circle makes can be visualized nicely, but you can't make anything about it. The closed circle itself, how to approach it from outside, and then suddenly a radiation comes out and go forever there.
Wow.
So we have to control it by strict mathematics and strict formalism, and that's done by the point of the absolute zero of time, and time start not in zero with a plus sign, meaning the limit from the future going back, it touched the zero, but it's not the zero itself, with infinitesimal distance. That's mathematicians study that in the limits. You have to do that. There's no way, because you have a continuity there. And it's dealing with the continuity and the events. That's what caused that, these enormous problems of philosophers and Kalimin at the time. And they have a good excuse. It was not developed yet, but it's developed now. Nobody has excuse not to attend to that and develop it further. Meaning we have to go to Ilm Al Kalam and revive it again.
How would you define Ilm Al Kalam?
The study of the emergence of the universe. The necessary existing being, we could say it has now merged essentially in ontology and philosophy. In that sense.
So Ilm al-Kalam would be philosophy, but linked to the divine text, the revelation.
Yeah.
Ilm al-Kalam. Ustad, how do you explain or understand divine speech? What is this? Is this of sounds, letters? People are curious about this subject as well. What is divine speech? What is divine kalam?
It is these what you either is written, or if you pronounce it, a human being or a machine pronounce it or something, it's like a sound. How it comes from the divine to you, we don't know.
What I mean is this: the Quran is kalam.
For example, the Prophet described how the wahi comes to him. He described various ways. Say one way is the most difficult on him is that he hears something like the ringing of a bell. Yeah. And then when the ringing bell is gone, he has received that and memorized the text.
Already, instantaneously.
Yeah.
It's like instantaneously.
Instantaneously. It's written in his brain cells or in neurons or synapses. We don't know how the mechanism. Another one says, and sometimes the angel appears to me like a man, like the angel who came to Maryam, salawatullahi alayha. Appears like a man, Bashar Sawi. For him, not to anybody else. Sometimes it appears to someone else, but let's appear to him and tell him, Ya Muhammad, qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad. For example, I don't know if it came this way like this one or came with the ringing bell. And the third one is nothing. He feels a meaning in his heart with necessity.
Wow, that's interesting.
So how it doesn't make any sense. Somehow the divine is capable to radiate that in his creation somehow.
What I meant was this though. When we say Quran is Kalam Allah, right? It's the Kalam of Allah.
The result is that al-mutakallam bihi. That's what the action of kalam, of speaking, produces.
Yeah, so in a way, it's used metaphorically.
So
That's
is not an attribute to Allah. The attribute is al-mutakallimiyya, that
but
Allah is capable of speaking and communicating with any other entity, which must be His creation, because there can be only one necessarily existing being. There is no other divine being with whom Allah can talk. No, no.
yes, but so Kalamullah would be a metaphor in a way to refer to the communication of Allah to humankind. That's what.
Call it whatever. Kalam for us is also communication.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a metaphor. No, it's kalam. It's kalam.
But because the Athari Salafis act as if Allah literally spoke the Quranic Arabic.
What mean letter spoke with mouth and no? What they don't mean that. So
they don't mean that.
They mean nothing. They don't know what's going on, and they say you don't need to know what's going on, how it is done.
Yeah.
You don't need. For example, the writing of the tablet, according to the description of Old Testament, is that like a fire pen, like a pen of fire came and started engraving in the rocks.
Wow.
And that engraved tablets was taken by Musa. The first lot, Musa smashed on the ground and poor Harun. Poor Harun suffered badly. Yeah. And he suffered until now in the Jewish scripture, being accused is the one who made the golden calf.
SubhanAllah.
So, what meaning metaphor? I wouldn't go in that. But it's the result. It's not attribute. The attribute is the mutakallimiyya. And the action is the kalam itself, the production process. How it is, it seems to be no way for us to conceive how it works. There's no way to conceive. We have no model in the universe who can show that how it is. The same, for example, how the universe jumped out of nothing with this singularity.
Wow.
Nothing in concept, except something emerging out of nothing. But we know it's caused by an entity. It's not causing by nothing. That's impossible. It has to have a illah which produces it. The illah is the divine action. Yeah. The nature of the action is beyond our comprehension. It's self-explanatory for Allah. For us, it's completely unexplanatory. All what you know, it must be like this and this, and it must be absolutely free, sovereign, and so on.
Well said.
And self-explanatory like that. It must be made as an axiom. There's no other way. Because if we don't postulate that, we end in either infinite regress or an impossibility, as no creation is possible. And we end with a dead, blind, deaf nature, which cannot explain, at least first step, it cannot explain the existing reality. Impossible to explain. I bet really, but it needs research. Maybe it takes millennia to complete the research, and that it can be proven by analyzing the concepts much deeper, which may take thousands of years. We don't. Some of these things were discussed for thousands of years until they crystallized recently. So it may take thousands, millions of years, but it can be proven that a necessary existing being cannot be deaf, blind, dead nature. It's impossible. It's a contradiction somewhere internally, but needs really somewhere. But we don't need that. It's enough for us to know we have a reality which is definitely contingent, manifestly contingent. No doubt, nobody claims which has any right mind. It must be absolutely mentally deranged that it's not contingent. So each item of it and this bit and this is having a start in time. And the whole, what is visible and so on, leave the divine and the external, the supernatural, outside natural entity out of it. It emerges also apparently in time, even if we have to go to the limit to 0 plus from the right. Then the question, how did this emerge? And that one, even totality is not necessary, because there are initial parameters which must be chosen before the moment of emergence. The choice must be there already, because there's no laws, no way to formulate the laws of the universe because of the contingent nature, which is free from any parameter. All parameters are fixed internally, so you can say it's somehow necessary. It's not. There's none like that. Whatever you formulate in each form, in form of matrices, and form of operators, and form of computer programming, whatever formulation you use for the reality, it has to have initial value and starting points. And they are arbitrary. They are not dictated by the program or by the law. No, the law is depending upon them. The law is an abstract entity. We may say, okay, so somehow have a necessity in itself, but these initial parameters are just certain numbers that be chosen. That's the way to go. That's enough. But I'm absolutely certain that an purely ontological proof can be fashioned. Saint Anselm, you might be aware about the ontological proof of Saint Anselm, but it fails that that he treated being as if it is an attribute. Being is not that; it's a modality. That's the problem. If it would have been attribute, it would the proof would be absolute. It says we can conceive things and it can bigger and bigger, but the things which nothing bigger than it can be conceived. That's what Allah is, bigger and more perfect than anything else by definition. So that entity, because the deficient one exists, by greater reason, that one must exist. But the problem, by greater reason, you can scale attributes, not modality. Existence is not an attribute. No greater reason is either
existence is not an attribute. Existence.
But if you say, for example, hot and hotter and hotter, then that's it. The one who is hotter is bigger or larger. That may make sense because these attributes which you can't scale. But existence is a modality, either this or this.
You know, Mullah Sadra, I think influenced by what's his name? Suhrawardi. He's got a theory of gradation of existence, where existence of Allah is absolute, and the creation, the existence, gets lesser and lesser in degrees. And he gives the example of light. Light, like the sun, is, let's say, absolute in this sense, and the light of the torch or the candle is finite, is limited.
This has merit, but the problem with that is that still all contingent beings are separated with an infinite distance from the being of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if say the contingent being as someone is more contingent than the other, someone is more closer to the necessary setting, but even if it's close to the infinite distance. That's a problem. There's a gap there, an absolute gap, unsurmountable.
I see, and that's what dismantles the theory of gradation. Mullah Sadra, I see.
Another example for this, but it's related actually to necessity existing and the infinite regress, but in the back door is like, for example, one of the question which philosophers say, one of the most fundamental problem of philosophy is to find out, to explain why, there is anything rather than absolute nothing. The really point there is to point out is that the absolute nothing is an impossibility. That's
an impossibility. Exactly.
Impossibility. So the question is empty. It looks like a valid question, but it deceives you. That's another type of linguistic.
By the way, is that an example of a linguistic fallacy?
Yeah.
That's an example of a linguistic fallacy, right?
Yeah, that's another nice example. But that's absolute nothing is impossibility. It needs to be established. It's not immediately, although we imagine it and we have a word for it, but we have to, the best way is to say, we have at least one contingent being, that's me. I perceive myself. It's absolute. Nothing can be by internal perception. It's this absolute. That is cogito ergo sum. I recognize myself, therefore I exist. Obviously, the formulation is not the correct formulation because this is not a logical conclusion. This is the immediate internal internal perception that my own existence. The moment I'm conscious of my consciousness, my existence. So this is, and then I'm immediately conscious when I analyze that I am contingent. So there are contingent beings. Now this contingent must have another contingent as its condition, etc. And we go and go with them, and then it must end in an existing being.
Yes.
So in a reality, conceivable or imaginable, or if it is a possible at all to be, it has to have a necessary existing being. So the absolute nothingness is impossible.
Yeah, nothingness does not exist. It's an impossibility.
But you could postulate how the word nothing refers to an impossibility because it refers to absolute emptiness. It should refer to something rather than nothing. So the statement itself is have an internal fallacy, but it may need to be the issue that the absolute nothing is an impossibility may need some explanation like this way, expanding like this way. Alternatively, said the concept of an essential existing being is necessary and correct itself automatically, because some philosophers say the concept of necessity existing is somehow internally contradictory. They try to. So everything is contingent, that's fine, that's nothing. And the necessity existing is just a fallacy. Again, they are running away. They try to get to argue that Allah does not exist, or a necessity existing, but that does not work. Even physicists will say, even Hawking will say, in the brief history of time, it goes all the way to the beginning of time, and then assume that the four-dimensional space, and then when the space dimensions flipped over and become a time dimension. But what does it make it flip? Say that's some kind of quantum process. What's with the quantum process? The quantum process we know after the beginning of time. All of them are time dependent. They are defined in if there's time. If there's no time, how to define a quantum fluctuation? Then he must say it must be some spontaneous action. So we are running away from God, and then suddenly we face him. There's no way to run away.
Well said. Well said.
There's no escape from God. Don't try to escape.
Exactly. This is the truth.
Whatever you do, you will end there. And then Yawm al-Qiyamah, you will face him face to face, and they will be then, you will be looking bleak and dumbstruck. Cannot say anything. Say, well,
exactly.
Here I am. Tell me.
Ultimate truth.
What do you think now? That's a bad way of doing things. You have to face the problem now and solve it. Mostly is that atheism is coming. Main things maybe when we just today, I think we took a lot of time, and if it becomes too much, it will bother the head of the people and so on. When we come to how the so-called evil came to the world and the suffering,
we should do this.
One of the main reasons, people going to Ilhad, because they cannot perceive. They say, okay, but the problem with suffering is not solved this way, because just let me just quickly say, there is suffering. According to their perception, there's suffering.
Do something. Do something.
Okay. So there is suffering. They say it may be due to nature. Nature is deaf, dead, blind, have no mercy, no goodness, no attribute. It's just necessity. It works by necessity. So we cannot blame it or not blame it. It has to be like that. And that's it. They don't recognize that. But if it is necessarily existing, and it has to be that, meaning that suffering and the way it's universe is somehow having certain necessity. Why you accept it from this and not accepted that the divine being who made the universe almost perfect, except this suffering and so on, which have to be discussed, obviously, and explained, because it is impossible to avoid them while having free will, for example, having a testing universe. So there's no way. It's impossible to have free will without this free will. Free agents are capable of committing the utmost nasty criminal acts and insult to God and killing others and genocide.
Amazing.
Otherwise, it's not free will.
This is very nice.
To make it sure it's impossible. Why don't argue this way? They say, oh, tsunami. Tsunami is the nation were it not for earth movement and mountains going up and down, so life would not have been created in the first place.
Good point.
In the process of development. Without this movement, the earth will not be capable of supporting life.
Very nice.
It's much bigger gain.
Very nice.
Alternative will be a universe where everything emerges immediately and everyone is like an angel and so on. And this is definitely an inferior to the current universe where you have this freedom. This is the highest value in existence, because the most important attribute of the divine,
freedom.
He is a free agent. He's absolutely free to create and make whatever he wants. But he is also perfect in knowledge. And absolutely perfect and infallible. And he will make usually the best choices, or choose from the best ones which are comparable. You want him to choose a universe which is dead or stupid. But he said, no, I choose a better one. Your choice is wrong. My choice is better.
Ahsant.
But we get it in another time and expand that and discuss that even a finite being cannot question the infinite being without undermining and annihilating reason. So all of these, that's where the really most atheism come. The other one is just say, oh, if we accept there's a God, meaning there's a real possibility that messengers and so on, and then it will make my life miserable. Don't fornicate, don't do this, don't do that, do this. I prefer to be loose and work, do things the way I like, and define things according to my desire. That's one avenue. So they want to indulge in that. And especially, and for that, the first step is to deny there's the akhirah. Because the moment you believe there's a God and there's some revelation and maybe accounting, you are stuck. You have to live somehow a moral life and restricted life. But you don't want to do that. But instead of choosing, so I'm going to rebel against God like the devil, you say, no, I'm denying that he exists. So I feel I fool myself that I'm safe and I will get away. You will not get away. Don't fool yourself. But this is better another time, which we go in this ratio of
Inshallah. Thank you very much.
Qadr and so on.
Thank you for the session, Ustad. I think the people
But the starting point should be the revelation and the necessity of the universe and the principle of infinite regress, the impossibility of infinite regress of conditionals. And based on that, we are stuck that there will be spontaneous and then claim that Allah is not active or only all actions done in eternity, and somehow they act at their يقول وقوع الأمر في وقته على الوجه اللائق في وقته المناسب. That's what has been created with an action in eternity past will happen in a due time as planned. But there's a gap. How it happens there, how this action now knows that it has been enacted time past. There's a gap in time and gap in activity. And the causing thing is separated from the cause thing. But it can't be, because the causing thing must be ahead, that's touching infinitesimally. And that's what the philosopher discussed, that the illah has to be with the ma'lul. Only the spontaneity and the free will of the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained that. And this means spontaneity. So it's necessary for the meaning of necessarily existing and being perfect and capable of creation. Otherwise, he's not creator. Otherwise, he can't do nothing. He's dead.
Exactly. That's the root issue. That's the fundamental.
Yeah, that's the fundamental. That's the fundamental issue, not the other side of time and the simplicity and so on. No, this has nothing to do with simplicity. Simplicity is two entities, cannot be cut into pieces, cannot be compressed. It's absolutely solid. That's Allah Samad. The Samad is the Muslim, has no, as Ibn Abbas said, la jawfa lahu. It has no internal cavity. That's a metaphorical, because anything have internal cavities have a weakness, because you can crush it down. So if it has no internal cavity, you can't crush. It's absolutely solid.
Absolutely solid.
Beyond any imagination. Beyond any imagination. Next time, inshallah, we'll discuss the issue of space and so on, and Arsh maybe, and then maybe another session. Or before that, we do the issue of Qadr, because it's more. And I say that the issue of Qadr is how evil came to the world. But it's connected to the free will and the divine freedom is most important. Free will of humans is postulated and it says, but it's secondary actually.
Definitely.
If we don't establish the divine freedom, then we can't establish any reality whatsoever.
Exactly. Inshallah, the next episode of our Kalam and philosophy series will be on Qadr. Then this will be a good topic. People will benefit from this tremendously, inshallah. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Al-Mas'ari. This was amazing. Inshallah, the people will benefit in general, and our Salafi friends in particular.
Salafi and Ash'ari and everyone.
Exactly.
Both have to proceed further from that historic moment, which is maybe excusable at that time. I'm not going to accuse anyone of any mischief or bad intention, and except the issue of Qadr, because I think there's a party which has bad intention. That's the rule.
The Umayyah, for example, they wanted to be predetermined.
It is Qadr. It's already decided before the creation of the world that we become ruler. You have to shut up and accept us. That's it. So build that on that, which is not true. But that's where Qadr came. Tyrants and they always are fatalists.
All of them, yeah.
This is what the system of the universe. That's the reality which Allah enacted. If you believe in Allah, if He did not wanted that from eternity, we would not have been here.
Yes,
that's it. That's right. So there's a mischievous party in this issue. In other issues, divine attributes, some of it emerged from that, by the way.
That's the root.
So it's partly indicated created by some mischievous parties, but cheating everyone to get involved in something which looks like in the face abstract and important self, but reality is to serve these tyrants. It's
Ustad,
amazing how these tyrant
Rashid,
scholars and these deviant scholars and the treasonous scholars have messed up. Imam Ibn Mubarak, you remember his famous verse, وَلَا أَفْسَدَ لَوْ بَدَّلَ دِينَ إِلَّا الْمُلُوكُ وَأَحْبَارُ سُوءٍ وَرُهْبَانُ. Who even demolished the religion except the kings and the evil scholars and the evil monks. Not the common people. Common people are good. They never
exactly.
they never start genocide. They never do these. It is these Ahbar and the kings.
How did they trick us? Like Rashid says, I'm very good. They distract us with minor details. What do they say?
Exactly.
You're not using miswak. You're not
Yeah.
using miswak. You're doing bid'ah. This is why Palestine is suffering. This is why people are getting killed. You know, this is one of the best tactics and games they use to deceive and sleep the masses as well.
Yeah.
May Allah deal with them. Anyway, thank you very much.
على كل حال يلا اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد وبارك على محمد وآل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته وتصبحون على خير and we have another meeting inshallah if Allah gives us life. And we will indulge in another issue. Hopefully, Allah will open to us some solutions which will be satisfying for the heart and guiding to work really for the time we meet Him and will be questioned and deliver the accounts.